Wednesday afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. James Hicks here, ITN Live. Another phenomenal episode. I know it will be. I am here with a friend of mine. We've had him on before, Mr. Greg Narain. You know him as an entrepreneur. You know him as principal founder of FounderCraft. FounderCraft is that startup advisory that works with founders and startups to navigate the tools and skills needed for them to succeed. That's on the business side. Today we're going to get a little bit more behind the scenes and personal because this man has recently competed in his second bodybuilding tournament. Each time he competes, he walks home with medals. I think he walked away with 3 medals this time, a couple of second place medals and a fourth place medal. So shouts out to him on that. Let me bring Greg on so we can talk a little bit about all of his efforts, his activities, planning, nutrition, all that good stuff. Greg, we can always talk business.
Of course.
We can get down that path and talk about startups and ROIs and whatever that conversation can be. I want to get behind the scenes and talk about the man's hair, the spray on tan.
Oh man.
The preparation, and the training behind all that. But first of all, how you doing, brother?
I'm good. I'm in that post-show glow.
It's not the tan. It's not the spray-on tan. It's okay.
The tan is still. I think it's still a little bit there. As a friend of complexion, it's a weird thing to have to tan on top of it, but. It's a messy affair. I don't recommend it for anyone, and I feel sorry for all my fair-skinned friends out there who need that on the regular.
and the idea, so I'm a pivot already, right? I mean, the idea behind the tan, is that just really to show the definition better? What
it
really
does.
Is that?
Yeah. So, so the show itself it's kind of a bit of trickery, right? Like there's a lot of lights on you. And so, most of what you're doing when you're posing is, sort of bending your body or shaping it in whatever posture to sort of accentuate one way or another. And so the tanning actually helps create better shadows, right? Okay. And so that's ultimately why almost like everyone tans. Like I've never seen a competitor not tan, regardless of how dark they are naturally, right? They always tan.
Okay. And like I said in the intro, this time again, you walked away with some hardware, I believe, right?
Yeah, I got.
Let's see what you got, brother. Let me zoom in.
These are my
my goodness,
Colorado NPC. These are some big ass medals.
You got to be in shape to carry those around, right?
Yeah, it's good. It's Yeah, as you said, I got 2 second places and 1 fourth. This is my second time doing it. And so the last time I got 2 firsts, 1 third, and 1 fourth. But caveat there is that I was the only one in like 2 of my categories. So those 2 firsts were sort of like defaults, right? So I don't count them, right?
Hey, no, you got to be in it to win it. You got to be in it to win
it.
Look,
I count them like in the fact that like, hey, I still trained, I showed up, no one else showed up, so guess what? I guess I won. But I do consider myself far more competitive this time because like I beat out somebody for every one of my medals this time. So that means a lot more to me, to sort of to have done that.
That makes sense. So what were the categories? I just know the medals, and you just showed up. What were the different types of categories that you were in?
So there are many kinds of bodybuilding, which I think a lot of people aren't familiar with, and you probably shouldn't really have to be. But the one that there's bodybuilding, which is what you probably think about, which is like the big, huge people, and they do that by weight. So it's really like weight class, right? So you're like up to a certain amount of weight. There's what they call men's. That's the one like in a Speedo, right? There's what they call men's physique, men's classic physique, which is really more of a full body athletic look, right? So it's like that classic bodybuilding look that we're used to from the older days.
Right.
Today, everyone's gotten monstrous. So bodybuilding is like this other beast of a category now compared to what I do. And I do what they call men's physique, not men's classic physique, which is where we wear board shorts. So for me, legs aren't really part of the equation. It's more of an upper body torso thing based on your overall sort of athleticism. So now my event that I do, men's physique, is based on height, not weight. So I compete with people up to 5'8". I'm 5'5", and I compete with people up to 5'8". And then that's group A. Group B will be like 5'8" to something else. And then there's group C, which is like 6 feet and above or whatever, let's say. But you can be any weight inside of that. That's crazy thing, right? So I literally, the guy next to me, I think you saw the picture on Facebook. The guy next to me, so there's the height, right? Like in my category, right? Yeah. So there's that guy, right? But then there's also by age. So they have like open, which is all ages, all experience, and then they have like what they call masters category. So I was in the Masters B category. So Masters goes from like, I think like 35 to 43, 43 to 50, and then 50 plus, right? There's 3 categories of Masters. So I was in the second Masters category, middle-aged dudes. That guy was the only other guy in my group, but I mean, look at him. I could fit, remember that scene in Star Wars? Like I could fit inside of this guy, right? Like, and I think he may have even been older than me, right? Like, but he's got like, 50 pounds on him. Pride.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, you hold your own. You got the pose down. I love that. I mean, I had to put the prep picture up there too. The man before he even put the shorts on. Yeah, that one was the tan the day before. You can see I think I actually look better in the tan photo than I did, on stage. But yeah. Now, doing all of that, and I believe last time, your first time, and I wonder if you did this time, did you have prep and coaching in terms of how to pose? Because that's a whole thing as well, right? How to actually get a better walk.
I absolutely did. So I have a great coach, Lisa Ann at Karma Fitness. She's here in Colorado, but we train virtually. Right. And so she puts together my nutrition plan. She puts together my workout plan. And then we do posing practice once a week. And then like 2 or 3 times a week as we got closer to the event. Posing, I would say, is really the hardest part, because. So here's the thing: like, the physical training is more natural to most people, right? Like you go to the gym, you work out, like it's fine. Just do more of this, do more of that. Like you could do that, right? Yeah. But posing, it's like a pageant, right? Like so you're learning a lot of other things that honestly, I don't know, for me are like, they don't come naturally, right? Like, my coach's advice is like, walk like you're on the beach, like you're in Baywatch. And I'm like, that's embarrassing, right? Like, like that.
But like, that's what it's going to take for you to get one of those medals. Walk.
But that's what you got to think, right? And the really hard part I would say is that there's posing like when you're home by yourself. Yeah. And then there's posing when you get on stage, and it's like the real-time performance of it is actually very different because, all of us are backstage are joking like we just trained 20 weeks, 5 months for 5 minutes, right? Because like you're literally out, you do your twists, you do your turns. It takes like all of like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, like if you're lucky, 5 minutes because they're moving you around and stuff, right? Yeah. And then you're off, and that's it, right? Like. But if you twist, if you like, clinch your back a little bit too much, right? Like that could be like what costs you winning versus losing. I happened to one of my friends at the show. Like he said, literally the reason he didn't get a higher place at the show he did 3 weeks ago was literally, he's like, I knew it. I pinched my back. I felt it. And what it does, it changes the way your muscles look. It changes, and so the posing is really, really hard, like, because it's extremely intensive. Like, when I practice posing, I'm sweating and breathing heavier than like when I'm in the gym, because you are flexing everything. You have to remember like all this body language, like how you need to be. And for me, at least, and I find it to be one of the harder parts of the whole thing.
And it's more conscious, I guess, too, right? Because you actually have to think about each of those steps. I mean,
you're walking out. It becomes the more we practice, right? Like, if you're a good sprinter, when getting on the blocks is, how to do that, right? Like, and it's second nature to you. And I would say, like, for me, when I think about how I did in this show, even before the show happened, in my mind, I couldn't really appreciate the change in how I physically looked. Like, my weight was maybe 1.5 pounds heavier than how I competed last year. But I knew my posing was better. I knew I felt more in my skin this time than I did the first time. The first time when I had no idea, I'd never done it before, and then this time I just felt better about posing, right? I didn't have the best posing. Like, honestly, one of my second places where I beat was in there's a category. They have experience categories also. So they have like true novice, like first time ever. You've never been on stage before. And then they have novice, which just means you never won before, right?
Okay.
I was a novice, right? I think I could have beaten the guy that beat me, but I screwed up my posing, right? Because I got called. I got put in the middle. So, like, that's my big achievement from this show, was being put in the middle. Because, like, you have to work to get to the middle. Like, it means the judges think you're worth considering for.
If you're on the fringe, then they're like, you're going to get fourth, fifth, or whatever.
Basically, you're not going to end up too far up. But if they move you, that's what you're hoping for, right? Because that means that the judges want to see you, right? And so I got put in the middle for a little bit, but my posing wasn't great. So it's more to improve, like, for next year.
Awesome. And did you know at that moment that the pose was off, or did after?
Oh yeah, immediately when you screw up. But
okay.
Like, I knew, like, my coach sent me pictures from backstage because she was handing out awards, and she's like, "You need to stretch put your legs far wider apart." We talked about it 100 times, but literally the second you skirmish out there, you're like, you rely on what's autonomous, and so, like, we were practicing spreading my legs more, like, in the later parts. And all the parts I knew up until then, I did well. But it's the stuff that defines tweaks, right? Like, it just went out because you're like, everybody run out, and do it, and you just got to keep practicing it more and more, and that's what it boils down to.
It's all good, man. Congratulations on that sophomore debut, though. Again, some more hardware. We've talked a little bit, man. Look, I need help. Okay. I've completely fallen off the wagon, and COVID lockdown has just been brutal for me from a training perspective. You're staying on top of it, brother. You're doing it. You're competing. You've got your body right. You got your nutrition right. Tell me how all of that. How are you able to do that? The planning piece, the nutrition piece, the training, and all of that. Getting up, I can get up early in the morning. That's not a problem. I can get up 4 o'clock in the morning and go work out. I just don't have any place to go work out to.
Yeah, I've been spending a lot of time, James, thinking about this, and because I want to help other people do it, and I would say that the number one thing that helps me is that I create an external event around it, right? And I think the idea is just that by committing to a show. Now, by the way, I had to move my show multiple times this year because of all the COVID stuff and cancellations and whatnot, right? But because I committed to doing a show once per year, it serves as a forcing function for all my other things, right? And I know later we're going to talk about this philosophy I'm sort of developing around this, but an important part of the philosophy is what I call the loop, right? And the loop is kind of an acronym, and it stands for sort of like a legitimate outcome, right? And an ongoing progress, right? And so for me, it's about creating both, but refactoring the ongoing progress, right? Like, back into legitimate outcomes, right? So for me, my ongoing progress is to a healthy, balanced life that's sustainable, that allows me to be here for my son for as long as possible, right? Yeah. And there are any number of things and pursuits that I could choose along the way of how to achieve that goal. These are the lily pads along the way, right? And so by that legitimate outcome, right, like walking on it for a show, by creating that, what it does is it organizes all my other efforts around it. Right? Okay. The reality is that that's all I need for me personally, right? Is to make my goal tangible, right? So a lot of folks are, I just want to stay in shape, but that's the ongoing part, right? Like, the better way to do it, in my opinion, is to try and get in shape for something, but then keep getting in shape. And then ultimately that's in service of staying in shape.
Yeah,
right? So
have that carrot that you want to reach when you get closer
What's
to
the
it.
worst thing to happen though? If you catch that rabbit, right?
Yeah.
So if you set a goal where you catch the rabbit, then you're done, right? Like, so maybe it's, I got a wedding coming up, right? Like I've got, it's the summer. I got this pool. I'm gonna have a pool party for my birthday. I want to be in good shape by this date. Whatever it is, this is the key, I think, to it, is making sure you have these dates, right? Like setting some kind of external thing. Now, the good thing about external things is that the second part that I think makes you successful is you need a crew, right? Like we do these things on our own, but together, right? Like it's what the big lesson of COVID really is, right?
Yeah. Okay.
It's that you're separate but together, right? Like we're all still connected to each other, right? But we're all doing our individual pursuits, right? And so I can't make your fitness goals achieve the way I achieve mine, because that may not even work for you, right? But we all share a rally point, right? Like, and that that legitimate outcome. So if me and you say we're both going to do a show, now we've got something in common, and now we have something to hold each other accountable to. That's not just that person, right?
I got you. That makes a lot of sense, because again, I mean, it's the whole takes a village type of mentality, right? You can't do everything on your own. Solopreneur.
We need encouragement, right? We need encouragement, and we also need someone to kick our ass sometimes, right? Like, and so you need that. And here's the problem: like, I don't like social media as a general thing. I think is good, right? But it's not designed with the right set of people all the time, right? And the problem with that, I think, right, is that if you don't have the people that are on the same kind of journey, then you get a lot of random crosstalk, right? And so some people are going to be like comparing, and they're going to try to change your goal, right? Like friends like, well, let's just go out for drinks tonight, right? Yeah. That's a person trying to change your goal, right? Like when you got
to cut that out, right?
When you hang with like 20, 30 people who are all like working towards a thing, like fine, you go even if you want to go have those drinks tonight, there's no big deal with that. Like here's the thing: I live in the third part for me, right? The third leg on that stool is guilt, and more importantly, is that you don't have it, you manage it, right? So you can't feel guilty. Like the thing that happened, right? Like, okay, that's done. Now you got to manage the consequences of it, right? So if time was busy today, you can't hate yourself because you spent time with your kids and you didn't get to the gym. That's asinine thinking, right? Like that's the kind of thinking that destroys people, right? But what you got to say is, what am I going to do about that? Now, how could I have changed my day so that it didn't have to interfere with what I was supposed to do, right? How could I change maybe the time it takes me to do the workout? Can I work out more intensely? Could I make up for the time that maybe I lost? Yeah. And sometimes you just couldn't do shit about it. That's just how it was, right? Yeah. But when we clog ourselves up with guilt, then we're screwed, right? Because then basically that's quicksand. You're just never going to get out of that.
You can't get out of that, yeah. And I'll be honest with you, man. What you're not preaching to the choir. You're preaching to me because I can tell you I've kind of fallen off the wagon, and a lot of these principles and practices that you're talking about, I know them. And we all know them, right? If you've got a goal and they correlate to more than just training and nutrition and working out, things that they're really life goals and life priorities and things of that, right? So have a crew, have some folks around you that can hold you accountable. You can hold them accountable for. I mean, that really is critical, and that's key. I completely agree with that. There's 24 hours to a day. Find some time to properly slice out work, training, family, all of that. All of those are incredibly valuable. All of those need to happen, but take time away from the things that waste the valuable time throughout the day and focus on being more productive. I mean, that's what I'm taking from this, right? This is just me summarizing kind of what you said thus far. So
totally. And so there's a little more. We talked about this sort of method I've been using, or that I've been I'm sort of now looking back, trying to extract, right? Yeah. And so, I have a software background, so like I think in programming terms a lot. And so like I look at this, the idea that I've been playing with, and we talked about it loosely, and you kind of like this. I'll share it here and we can discuss it. I have this idea that I call the while method or the while loop, right? And so the while is an acronym, right? The W stands for work or the effort required to do something. The H requires the health, right? Like is your ability to do it. The I is your inspiration. The L are your limitations, and the E is the E is your experience of it, right? And so that's the while, and then the loop is what I was mentioning before. It's sort of that legitimate outcome versus the ongoing progress, right? And so when you combine these things together, if you think about it, the way the programming works, like a while loop is the kind of loop that is always running until an exception causes it to exit, right? So, for example, right, like you could say like, while this condition is true, I'm going to do these things until this condition is not true, and then I stop doing it, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, what happens is I think that people don't legitimately understand the WHILE properly, right? So you hear a lot of these complaints. So like typically like somebody like, so while you're overweight, we need to like start to look through each of these things, right? So for example, the work or the effort, right? Do you understand the work or the effort required to actually succeed at losing weight, right? And for a lot of people, they may think like, well, I need to go to a gym. And actually the reality is you just need to go on a diet, right? Nutrition is
it's nutrition. 80% of fitness is nutrition. Yeah,
exactly. So again, what I mean is most people get the effort wrong, right? Like, so they go to the gym and they're like, oh, I just worked out, and now they go stuff their face, and so they undo all of the effort, right? Because they don't understand. They don't understand the work itself, right? And so these are kind of the things that we as humans fail to do and put the research into to get into achieving a goal, right? The health, right? Which is that. How do I feel about it, right? Like, do I have like, the well-being to do it, right? Like, if I'm mentally frustrated, if I'm overstressed, right? If I haven't had enough sleep, if I don't have, the right raw materials to make this thing happen, I can't succeed either, right? And so people sometimes punish themselves by making these commitments and then forcing themselves through them. Like someone like, I have a cold. But they're like, I got to go to the gym. I'm like, no, because it actually lessens and worsens the work, right? For you to do that instead of taking the time to recover. Why do most people not spend time on recovery, right? You know, right? Stretching, rest days, all these other pieces that you take for granted.
That's critical. It's critical, yeah.
Critical. But people don't get it. They don't understand the health, the stasis of the system that they're actually working in, right? The third one, the I, the inspiration. This is where part of where that group comes in, right? If you don't find the right inspiration for why you want to do something, then nothing matters, right? Like, so sometimes it's an intrinsic force, right? Or sometimes an extrinsic force, right? Like for me, it's a little bit of both. Like I have a son, he's over there, right? I want to be around for him. That is a permanently perfect source of inspiration for me to do almost anything related to my health now, right? And then intrinsically, like I want to feel good, right? Like I want to be able to run and play with him. I want to do, right? Again, it's the loop, right? Like I have short-term and I have long-term parts to these pieces, right? The third, the limitations. This is the most important part. People are really stupid because they copy other people's goals, right? Mm-hmm. You got to set goals based on you, right? Not based on people you see, not on Instagram, not on your friends, not on the people you grew up with, and definitely not what your parents tell you should be, right? You got to know your own limitations. So if somebody tells you need to lose weight, you can't be like, I'm going to get to 5% body fat when you're 55%, right? Like, you got to work your way down to that weight, right?
In a very gradual process, right? That's not going to come in 2 weeks, yeah.
That's right. And then the last part's the experience, right? And the experience is really about how we choose to do the work, right? Because some people are like, well, I hate going to the gym. I'm like, who said you have to go to the gym, right? Like, did you know you could do calisthenics? Did you know you could do body weight exercise? Did you know you could do stuff with bands? Did you know you could do a class? Maybe you're the kind of person who likes classes. right? Did you know that you could just walk, right? Like, like, so like when it comes to fitness, at least, there's so many ways to experience a thing, right? People want to learn a new language, or they're like, well, I'm not good at reading. I don't have time to go to school. Don't trick yourself into believing there's only one way to experience something, right? And we get locked in, we buy into the patterns that we see, and what happens is we keep doing those things by copying. And so all of these forces are usually sabotaging our own effort.
Or we don't even do it because we already...
We don't even start. Most of the time, we don't even start.
Yeah, because we sabotage the mind and think that we can't do it because we're trying to look like Greg when, again, we're 20-30% body fat. And I see what you're saying. I completely agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's the idea, right? Is that you've got these vectors that you could use, that these are all levers that you could control. Yeah. Right? Like, so if the work takes this much time, well, then maybe you can't do it all the time, right? So you've got to figure out what your limitations are, right? You got to figure out how much the experience of that thing, and what's the right fit for you. It may take you a while, right? Like, people try to diet and they're like, it's not working. And I'm like, it's not working because it feels like work. So switch it out of that mindset and get it to these other things. It's like when we were talking about last time, I had that 4 steps to dieting, and only the last one was reducing the number of calories. I gave you all these other things. Mm-hmm. For everyone who wasn't here, it was refrain, like fasting, record, right? Like, so keep track of what you're eating. Replace, which is replace your bad foods with better foods, right? And then ultimately reduce, right? Like, all weight loss is math, right? But that was the idea, right? Was that you could change all these other ways of experiencing food, right? Remember, recording is all an experiential tweak, right? It's also like understanding the energy and the effort required, right?
Yep.
You're like, oh, I don't even know how many calories I need to cut because I don't even know how much I eat, right? Well, guess what? Now you start to work your way towards solving and seeing these things. Yeah. And then only at the end do you start to make change, right? But this is the pre-work required to succeed.
It's just like, and I'm just going to draw the similarities. It's just like financial planning, right? You don't know how much you have, or you don't have how much you're saving, investing. If you got checks in the checkbook, no, that doesn't mean there's money, right? You've got to have that financial plan, and hopefully everyone has. I don't want to assume, but hopefully most folks have some type of financial plan, and they're documenting that. Same thing is relevant, for health and nutrition. And it's true. If I don't write it down, I'm more of an app person, right? So I've got like LifeSum. I've got a lot of apps that I use to kind of help with that, right? I'll take a picture of the bowl of oatmeal that I'm using, and it'll calculate. But there's no excuse for not doing this tracking part, right? Of your form.
Tracking is the hardest thing for most people, right? Because it is a form of accountability, and
that's the hard part, is being accountable. You can do it. Right. Again, there's free apps, there's paid apps. You got a pen and paper. You can do it.
You want to be accountable, right? Like honesty is very hard, because working ourselves towards better versions of ourselves is a lot of work, and I think everyone appreciates that part is true, right? And so we want to nibble, we want shortcuts, we want the fastest way to do it. And they're like, well, what if I don't track? What if I just stop eating, right? That's what people do.
You will pass
right?
out. You will pass out.
How many times have you heard of someone doing that, right? They'll just starve themselves instead. They just stop eating. I was like, you don't have to stop eating. You just need to watch what you're eating, right? Like, to get a better understanding, and then eventually you don't have to watch anymore.
Man, I should take myself off camera because I'm just writing notes. Because again, you're preaching to me, brother. Because this whole thing, and I need to stop making that excuse, though. To be honest with you, just from my perspective, I've got the mountain bike out there in the garage. Jump on that thing. Got the Peloton 5 feet away from me, and I need to take the clothes off of that. It's been used as a clothes hanger for the last 4 days, right? I haven't gotten on it in 4 days, but but again, it's that accountability piece, and really working through what our the limitations, what that inspiration piece that you mentioned, I really like that, and making that
Yeah.
plain, right? You're doing it for your son. You're doing it for your family. Yourself secondary, right? Because again, you from a primary perspective, I want to make sure that I can go out there and hang out and run and play with my child.
Yeah.
So let me do these other things, put in the work that's required, put in that necessary behind the scenes work. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
It's also tightly coupled to the group again, right? Like
Yeah,
you remember
yeah,
right? Like guilt, group, um, and goal, right? Like those are the three legs on the stool, right? The group, what they do is they provide inspiration, right? Because they provide other ways for you to actually see how to be successful without actually having to run all the experiments, right?
yes,
And that's like ultimately what you're really trying to get, right? Like if you work or hang out with 20, 30 other fitness people or people on the journey, not like, remember, everyone's gonna be at different places in the journey.
yeah,
But what you're seeing is, I'm glad to see. I see Greg doing it. Like, I wasn't going to do it, but today, Greg did it. I mean, like me and you, we're on the watch. I see how many calories you
yeah.
burn, right? Like
Well,
all of
I
these
need to
things.
now. There you go. Now you're calling me out, right? Because I haven't worn it. I did put it on this morning, and I stopped sharing my activity. Just me being stupid and selfish, right? I'm not working out. I'm not sharing anything. Again, I need to bring my group back into the forefront here because my stand minutes, my exercise minutes, my move time. Again,
Mine
I'm
for
sitting here.
since
Dude, I'm sitting here looking at front of 5 screens for the majority of the day, and that's not good. Bring the little guy in. You know what? Bring the inspiration in. That's all good. That's what this is all about, brother. So
he's over there on his iPad. We got the remote school thing now going on, so it's a lot of work. Yeah.
at all of what 2 years old, right? He's got the distance learning going on already, right?
Oh, he's 5 now. Yeah.
Oh, dude. Oh my gosh. You're the one getting old, not me. Okay. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So talk to me. I mean, and again, I'm really taking this to action, right? This whole wild loop, and I wrote it down, and I'm going to kind of dissect it myself and maybe leverage it and find a way to put it into and implement it for myself as well. And I'll probably write a post about it and see if I can get you to contribute some
I
content.
need to write my post about it too. So the way I refine things by talking through them. So this is like very helpful for me.
I'll let you write yours before I write mine, so I
there you go.
get all the Google juice from it, right?
See, now it's set an external goal, right? Like, so now I have
Definitely. I don't know if I'll be. You know what? I'll commit to this, right? I don't know if I'm the stage guy, but I will get myself to the point of being stage ready.
Well, that's okay. That's all you can do. And by the way, there are online contests too that you could do. So there are, so if not, we'll have one, right? Like, but we could have one. Like, that's how I got into it. The first one I did was an online competition last year. It was called Summer Shredding, and you just mailed in pics, before and after pics. There's a lot of these online, right? And it's like a start to finish thing, and you like get 10 weeks or 20 weeks or whatever to improve yourself, right? And that's how I got into it. How you doing, Corey?
This could be a tail off of Founder Craft, right? You could do your own online bodybuilding competition, right?
Yeah, well, we'll have to catch up after this because my new startup is going to be powering a lot of this stuff, so you're going to see it soon.
Put me on every beta list, every early adopter, early tester.
I'm starting a new group next month, which you're going to be in, and anyone watching is welcome to join. We're going to be doing an accountability group for fitness for founders.
Oh my gosh, there we go, ladies. I shouldn't have opened my mouth, but I look forward to it. No, again, I mean, so I've been on some mailing lists, and I've been researching because again, we're not talking completely business today. We're talking fun, good stuff. Business is fun too, but we're talking fitness and health. Every mirror type exercise platform has reached out to me, or I've reached out to them. So Form
Right,
Fit,
right.
Tempo, Carbon, and Tonal.
Yeah.
I've texted everyone, I've tweeted them, I've sent them emails, but the folks at Tonal have really been pretty proactive. I'm getting emails, I'm getting phone calls, and everything from them, and kind of looking at the pros and cons of each of them. I think I'm gonna go that route. It's definitely some skin in the game from a dollars
It's
and cents
crazy.
perspective. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely, you get what you pay
It,
for.
it's a lot more. Well, here's the thing. I will tell you this, relatively speaking,
Yeah.
buying any gym equipment is expensive, right? Like, I think Tonal's the only one I know of, like, that I have a friend that has it, and they swear by it. Now, and he used to go to the gym a bit, but it worked out. Like, his wife uses it too, so I think, like, they got a lot of a good use of it, especially in the quarantine times. But
Yeah.
um, my only worry for you with the tonal or any of these would be, is there enough weight, right?
Yeah.
Because like we're both relatively strong, so like at some point you run out of resistance weight, like in the machines themselves, right? And so depending on the goals, right? Like like I the way I train is I always just measure for strength. I don't like do it for aesthetics per se, right? Like that's a side effect of me getting stronger.
Right.
So I'm constantly trying to figure out how to lift more. But like if I wanted 300 pounds of weight home, I would have to spend $300 at least if I could
You'd have to
even
go
get
out.
it.
Yeah, you'd have
Right?
to go
Like,
out. Well, if it wasn't for the lockdown, you'd have to go out and get a squat rack or something like that.
yeah,
So I've been looking at that too.
I have space. I'd have to buy like barbell. It's $1 per pound kind of usually.
Yeah.
And you'd need I would need at least 400 pounds at home, like just to be able to really train, right?
Yeah.
So it's very complicated to have your own set. So the tonal is great. Like if you don't have a lot of space to like have I think it goes up to like 200 pounds though.
Correct. 200. Yeah.
So I think like it's a decent amount of weight, but like you couldn't like bench, you can't do a lot of compound, or you couldn't bench press with it. For example.
Exactly. And that's my challenge, right? That's why I haven't actually signed on a dotted line.
That's my thing with it. Yeah.
I'm not trying to get lean. I can do that without any issue. I'm looking more for building the strength, building the core, and lifting heavy weight, right? I mean, doing squats,
Hey,
and things of that nature.
I would say instead of getting on stage, why don't you consider powerlifting?
All right. Well, okay.
Because that's what you like doing. You see what I'm saying? It's the experience, right? Like, so
not the CrossFit type stuff. So I'm
not
not a
CrossFit,
CrossFitter.
No, right? Like, because you get your combines, right? Like,
yeah.
I think it's like, what is it? Deadlift, squat, and bench, right? It's the three things. There's tons of competitions. They have like different age groups, so you don't have to compete with like 20-year-old kids.
That would be bad. That would be bad.
And but it
50-year-old man would get laughed out of the
mathematical, right? Like like you're always working towards a higher total, so that's what's really powerful about it.
I decline to answer your question right now, Mr. Sanders, because the number is no longer where it should be.
My number is garbage right now as well.
Yeah, so we will plead the fifth and every other.
I will gladly have a benching competition to see how much we can grow though. Like
yes,
that would be fun. Yeah. I'll share you one anecdote from like training for a show. It is the most horrible part. Is the last week before the show. It's called peak week. Yeah. And this is the thing that I honestly don't like. People don't understand like how crappy the last week can be. And the really bad part is that you have these depletion workouts. Okay. So the best analogy I have for describing what you're doing is that imagine all your muscles are like sponges and basically you're wringing all of them out, right? So you're getting all the glycogen out of your muscles. And so these depletion workouts, they're basically like full body. They're like 10 or 12 exercises, 3 rounds, 40 reps for every exercise.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you will like do 40 reps on the bench press or 40 dumbbell flies or 40, like squats or like everything is 40, right?
And you got to do them all too, right? Past fatigue, not just to fatigue.
Oh yeah,
you
are like exerting and exhausting out everything. And these days you're probably eating 900 to 1,200 calories, right?
That's the problem right there that I have, because that just seems inaccurate. Right. On
It
a
is
regular
absolutely-
2,500 a day.
This is not a thing you do normally, right? Like the week
Yeah.
before I was doing any of this stuff, right? But it's for that last week,
Yeah.
right? It is it's an important part of the process
Okay.
because later what you do is then you carb up to test refilling your muscles, and that's you're trying to find the right spot where you look the best, right?
Okay.
Like so you're literally intentionally eating carbs, and then you're like sending pictures every 30 minutes after you eat, so you know like how to prep for when you're gonna be on stage. It's
Okay.
very it's all science. It's all like all very like methodical, like how it works.
Yeah.
But it is very very exhausting, right? Because like those days I was eating cod and asparagus, and that was like every meal, 6 meals a day, only cod and asparagus for like 3 days straight.
Okay.
Like 4 ounces of cod, 6 spears of asparagus times 6, right? Like that was all your food, for 2-3 days.
Tons of water, right? Water every
Tons of
time
water.
you
You
breathe.
drink like a gallon of water. You taper your water a little bit towards the end. But yeah, there's a whole regimen and a routine, and it's very tuned to you. So your coach will design the right plan for you, and you're constantly taking pictures. But
Okay.
the flip side, if you're going up, right? Powerlifting. By the way, as we get older, powerlifting is actually very powerful because the stronger you are, the better it is for your bone density, the more weight you can actually lift, right? Bone density is going to keep you good and healthy, like in the long term. So, like if you ever done a DEXA scan, my DEXA scans are great. Like my bone density is super compact because I lift really, really heavy weight, right? As much as I can, always, right? And so, like my goal for this year, by the way, my bench goal was to get back to 315, right?
Okay.
I haven't done 315 since I was 25, right? So
How many?
Well,
and again, I want to ask that, but I'll rewind and answer Corey. At a minimum, everyone's goal should be at least to be able to bench their weight, right? So you should, at a minimum. Yeah, you know what I mean? At a minimum, you should be able to at least bench that. So, okay, 315 is respectable, yeah.
Totally, yeah. I was 165 when I was benching 315.
Okay.
So that's like actually my goal for my shows. Like by the time I'm 50, is to actually be at 165 on stage.
Okay.
That's my goal, right? So again, remember I said long-term, ongoing progress?
Yes, sir.
My goal is in 5-year segment. It's a 5-year goal. Every year, my goal is just to be 5 pounds heavier on stage, right? So that's how I actually parceled my goal out, right?
Okay.
So now I'm going to start bulking up, and I'm going to spend the next 9 months trying to gain those 5 pounds of muscle, or actually probably 10 pounds muscle over the course of like 9-10 months. So a pound a month of muscle is kind of like my target territory.
And that's doable, right? I mean,
it's doable. Like I'm not setting remember limitations, right?
Yeah.
I'm not setting goals that are impossible to achieve, right?
Yeah. It's a stretch because you want it to be
on the high end. It's going to be on the high end, right? Yeah. But that's why it's a goal, right? Yeah. So if at the end of this time frame I'm only up 6 pounds, cool. Like I'm happy with that, But part of it is that now I've been dieting, right? This cut in preparation started when the quarantine started, so I started dieting basically down for 22 weeks. Okay. It was hard. It was just very, very long, right? And a lot of people went through this because we didn't know when the shows were going to be, all that stuff, right? Yeah. And then going up, I was gaining what I wanted. I was on track. I was gaining about 1 pound a week, in total. So a little bit of fat and, some muscle, right? And then, I got sick, and so I lost a month. So I only had 1.5 months, 2 months of gaining this year, and I put on about 1 pound of muscle.
Okay.
Because you lose muscle.
Yeah, I mean, and we've talked about this. I don't know how, but you say you don't do sit-ups, push. You don't do the core work, the core exercise, the quote unquote, but yet and still, you look all right, brother, with your shirt off, right?
Yeah, but you can tell it pretty core. I have no muscle bellies on my abs, right?
I can pull the picture back up. You're doing okay. You're doing okay. So let me ask you 2 questions.
If I work my abs, I wouldn't have to be as skinny, right? Because they would be more visible.
All right. Touche on that. Let me ask you 2 things. So, the primary exercises that you do perform, and then I'm really focused and dialed into supplementation, right?
Yep.
Especially
Yeah.
clean supplementation. I'm looking at, I've looked at a number of manufacturers and vendors, and I've actually got ladder coming at the end of this week because I'm looking at the ingredients, I'm looking at how clean they are, and the fact that they're, they're cleared and certified for professional athletes. So talk to us about the actual exercises that you'll do on a regular in a regular training session, and then what do you do from a supplementation perspective?
Yeah, totally. So exercises is largely, I do mostly strength training. This year, I probably, because I'm keeping my coach full year, I'm probably going to do more of a bodybuilding routine. So it's really like, I think like in the strength training world, I'd be doing more progressive overload with, a lot of compound movements, right?
Yeah.
So benching, squatting, deadlifting. I personally was using this year like a push-pull leg split twice a week, right? So I would have like push, like, so one primary compound on like chest, a flat bench, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe the second day would be like, on the second push day would be like incline flies or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And then the volumes are always like 4 to 6 reps, with maybe usually like a ladder, right, or something like that. Or I'll do 4 to 6 reps for all exercises, and then try to increase the weight every time I go by 2.5 pounds or whatever.
Okay, so you'll do the ladder, pull it out, boom, go to that, and from a hypertrophy perspective, you said doing the higher reps as well. Okay.
Yeah, so I'll usually have a mixture of some hypertrophy after. So generally speaking, I like to do like heavy compound first, and then hypertrophy on like my supporting exercises, right?
Okay.
So here, I'll pull up my spreadsheet actually, and then I can show you like the workout I was doing. And supplementation wise, and you should change up your routine, probably like, I would say like at least every 2 months, right? Like your body just get used to things, and you kind of need to,
sort of get stronger, right? And
you get stronger, but also like, I think
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was gonna say just people don't appreciate all the supporting muscles and ligaments, like, and how important they are. And so sometimes you can get really good at one exercise, but actually your strength is limited to that exercise.
Yeah. So along those lines, what I'm a big proponent of as well is muscle confusion, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Exactly.
don't go in every other day with the same exercise. Switch it up. Do some rows, do some whatever. Still work that same muscle group, that primary muscle group, but do something different. So that's a huge proponent of how I go into the gym and train as well. So.
Yeah. And to that end, I like using. I watch a lot of YouTubers, fitness YouTubers. So here's my workout that I was doing earlier this year, in the beginning of the year, and it may be a little hard to see, but I'll zoom in. But you can see like this is my. This is not the one I was doing actually. I was doing a different one. But this is just like an alternating full body where I was doing 2 days. This is a 2-day variant. So you can see here, like it's benching, squats, pull-ups, hamstring curls, overhead press, face pulls, right?
Gotta love face pulls. Oh my God, they are so neglected. Face pull is just amazing. Yeah, that is a great.
Yeah, I'll check the other workout I have because I was doing the face pulls like 3 days a week. But this is like workout A, and then there's like the workout B kind of version, which will be like deadlifting, incline press, etc. But you see, like my weight was this was like middle of last year, so this is like when I started training for my last show. But benching, I was doing 10 reps at 205, 8 reps at 225, right? And this is probably at about 150 pounds back then. So, look, like weighted pull-ups. So that's the kind of training I like to do. My coach will give like a much bigger variation, I'm sure now, like once we get going on this thing. And because with bodybuilding, you are like working multiple heads of like similar muscles, and, so there are a lot of different variants. So this is my push-pull leg. I think this is the one I was doing this year. So yeah, one arm, like some warm-up stuff, rack pulls, pull-ups, and this is a 6-day routine.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Right. So this one has like push pull legs like twice a week. So here's pull day 1, push day 1, So I was doing okay on bench, but I didn't get quite far enough. Like I'd still only gotten back up to 215 before I had to stop this year. And then you can see here, there's just different, so these are like the secondary days are not as hard as the first days. These are a lot of supporting exercises. Right. So higher volumes, like 10 to 12 reps, right? So more hypertrophy in the second parts of the week. So, a lot of it is depending on it's just really about getting volume in, right? And then time under tension, right? Like it's kind of ultimately the two things that are most important in all exercise, right?
Time under tension. Gosh, I miss those types of terms. And today was the first time I've said hypertrophy in 4 months, God. So
we see when you're hanging with the right people, these are your normal vocabulary. Now, supplements wise, what I try to, for nutrition, I try to get most of it from food, right? But I have some rules of thumb, usually for dietary purposes, where I like to be. So I like to be at least on a bulk, I'll probably want to be 1.2 to 1.5 grams per pound of weight, right? In protein, right? So at 150, I want to get about 150 grams of protein, 160, et cetera, or maybe 200 grams of protein. Now, the reason is that there's this thing called the thermal effects of food, thermodynamics of food. So it actually, your body spends more energy to burn protein. So it's not that I can actually use that much protein, but I need the calories. And so, 30% of the energy of protein is spent consuming the protein, but carbs, I think it's 10% or something. So, so carbs are actually a lot, they just get stored faster, right? You end up eating them more directly, right? Yeah. But people, I don't like depletion or, diets that rob you of macros. Mm-hmm. I don't find them, generally speaking, all the research I've done, it's not proven that it's better. Your body needs fat, your brain needs fats, right? You need carbs, right? Yeah. And you need so I prefer to have a balanced nutrition, right? Where I have all macros. I try not to have too much of anything. But what I found for my body, for example, is that lower fat is better, right? I'll give you an example. The day before the show or the morning of the show, I think my body fat on the scale was 9.2%, right? The day after eating 8 Krispy Kremes and 2 huge slices of pizza and a shit ton of food and some drink, my body fat was 8.7%, right? So
your whole diet should have been Krispy Kreme and
so
the whole time.
So there are rules here, right? So you will find things for your body, and that's what you got to learn, right? I feel too many times, you can't just read what you're supposed to do. You have to. Your body's a lab. It's a personal lab, right? And so the only way to know how nutrients affect you is to have them and then see what happens, right? Now supplements, the only real supplement I take is creatine. Yeah. So I've been taking creatine since I was 20 something, right? Mm-hmm. And so I take about 5 milligrams of creatine. I will sometimes take BCAAs.
Per day. I'm sorry. So per day.
Per day.
Per
day. Okay. Per day. Yeah. Yeah. I tend to take mine pre-workout, right? But it kind of doesn't really matter from what the research kind of shows. Yeah. It depends now if you're doing fasted workouts or not. I don't do fasted workouts when I'm gaining. I only do fasted workouts when I'm trying to lose weight. Mm-hmm. So these things are also changing around. But I would say I sometimes will take BCAAs, right? Because I don't eat that much red meat. I mostly stick to chicken and turkey as my primary source of protein. And because I have a high volume of protein that I want, I usually will supplement with protein as well. Okay. So I'll have, I don't really do the mix of casein and what I usually have whey protein because I don't have any inflammation, generally speaking, from the milk. But I have been a fan of, I've been taking this Vega protein. They have this really interesting one that one of my fitness groups on Facebook turned me on to. It's a nighttime recovery one. And so as an example, for example, one of the things I've been able to improve, last year I probably slept 4 hours a night. It's like my natural sleep cycle. I still wake up today. I woke up at 12:30, like, and I was up like on and off for the whole time. But I've been managed to get my sleep up to about 6 to 7 hours, and so I have been. This Vega protein is kind of like I think it's a pea protein, but it has melatonin, magnesium, and a couple other things. So you take it at night before you go to bed. And it actually like helps you relax and go to sleep. So I actually really like that. It's like a nighttime recovery sort of protein.
I didn't know it had melatonin in it, but I've seen it before, and it's interesting because I've gone the whey side, and I'm migrating to plant-based.
Yeah. Some people are chasing protein for nighttime too, right? So I've got a lot of recipes that I've figured out now and things that I like. My favorite dish that I make, I'm not back on tracking yet, so. But when I go back, my favorite dish is like my protein French toast. There's this guy, Greg Doucette on YouTube, famous, like, coaching guy, sort of turned me onto this recipe. But it's like egg whites, a scoop of protein powder, and just some low calorie bread. And then I put peanut butter on it, like 2 tablespoons of peanut butter. It takes 15 minutes to make, right? And, with cinnamon or whatever. And it's great. Like, it's 600 calories. It keeps me full for like 3-4 hours probably, right? And it's like 60 grams of protein, out of, maybe 180, 200 that I want to eat in a day, right? So I find that like a really filling kind of meal that goes down real easy because you can still have I feel like a kid when I eat it. I still have syrup on it. I can have whipped cream. Even with all that, you're like, that's 650 calories, like that's the thing. Remember what I said about the experience? It's like, yeah, sure, I can eat like cardboard tasting things, or I can like not make it suck, right?
I'm gonna have my son make that instead of the top ramen with all of that crazy sodium in it. We're gonna start making
protein French toast. Like I'll tell you, man,
protein French toast.
Yeah, because the egg whites are good, but the scoop of protein gives it a little bit more hardiness.
That's the idea.
And it just adds, an extra 20 grams of protein to the mix, right?
All right. I mean, these are, again, I'm writing notes about the loop and understanding the requirements from that side. I'm taking down some Vega protein recipes.
Do we train other athletes? No, I do not train other people. I do motivate them though. So I think my role is to help them, unlock all the parts. And I think the problem is that most people think like being good at this thing comes easy, and it doesn't. It means getting good at a lot of things actually to get good at this thing too, right?
Good point. Corey is an interesting person. Shouts out to Corey for joining. He actually played professional. I know he played professional basketball, so he's been through kind of that whole training regimen from an exercise perspective, from a going in and making sure you're eating properly and things like that. So it would be interesting to have him in this dialogue. So I'm glad he's watching and asking questions as well. Maybe he'll make some of these Vega French toast or Vega pancakes.
French toast is great. Pancakes. I highly recommend it. Yeah. The other thing I think of nutrition is if you're not planning it, you're probably failing at it, right? So
that's a life lesson right there. I mean, that's true. Yeah,
that's the truth. Like if you don't know what your next couple meals are already, then you're not really planning your nutrition, right? Like, and so that's okay, right? Like, but just don't expect it to be easy to achieve the goal if there isn't more planning sort of in it,
Now he's calling out names now, right? I don't know if my son. No, he better not be watching. He should be in online distance learning class right now. But that's good stuff. Mr. Narain, tell me. Let's wrap it up. Tell me what you got going on next. When's your next show?
I don't know. My goal is to do it close to my anniversary next year. So my wedding anniversary is in November. Mm-hmm. The first show I did was in December 1st, which I don't mind. But the problem is that that's an unfair assignment for my wife, right? Mm. Because then we can't have even a dinner for our anniversary. We did it this year. Last year when I did it, we were both in San Francisco, and I got the chicken at the chicken at Zuni Cafe. It was like I had to plan it. I planned it from 2 weeks out what I was going to eat that day. You know, like it was very, very hard. Like
you should just do Krispy Kreme donuts.
Yeah, I couldn't drink with her. I couldn't do any of that. So I promised her I won't have a show like after like our anniversaries, basically, because like I don't want to be in that spot where she has to give up that much. It's already a sacrifice on her part, and it's an improvement. Like when I'm doing all this other stuff. So hopefully I'll find a show to do like October-ish, right?
Okay.
Or early November. And my main goal is actually to give myself as much time to gain strength and size this year as possible, because my last 2 attempts were both really short gaining windows, like 3 months. And so I'd like to have like 8 months or 9 months to gain this time.
Okay. And by then be to the 165 or that's
no,
that's the other stretch. Okay.
So my goal weight this year is 170 before I cut, right?
Okay. Yeah.
170 would be the heaviest I've ever been in my life. So I don't know how doable it is. And this year I gained up to 158 before I had to start cut. I started cutting when the quarantine started, right?
Okay.
And I was probably maybe like 16% body fat at like 158. So
wow.
So my main goal is to stay under 20% body fat for sure.
Yeah.
To stay as lean as possible, but gain as much weight as possible. So my goal would be to get to 170 and then assume I'm going to cut about 25 pounds. So I'd be like 145 on stage. That would be a huge leap though, by the way. So more realistically, I could be like 137 or 138 on stage. I would be really happy. Because this year I was probably about 133 and a half or something like that. I forgot the number, but I was like, so if I could be 5 pounds heavier, that's my actual goal on stage, the day that I go on stage.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's again, that's one of those, that's a stretch, but, and it's going to be, you can't do it in your sleep, but.
Here's the thing. I can get to 170. I know I can get to 170. Can I get there in a healthy way? Like in a way that I'm not like overly fat? That's the main question, right? And so, here's the thing. Like right now I'm not tracking, and I've told this to folks who have asked, that have asked how things went. I said, I am mentally exhausted right now. Like I just like cannot bear the tracking anymore, right? And I was on a talk this morning, and the thing I was telling people is that the part about getting ready for a show that's really hard is there's no room for error, right?
Okay.
Because you go drinking for one night, you can undo all the calorie deficit you've been creating every day for a week, right? Mm-hmm. And so like when you screw up like a day, you could lose a week of training, right? It's a lot easier going up from that point of view mentally, right? If I'm gonna have that cookie, okay, big deal, fine, I had a cookie, right? I cannot do that on the other way, right? When you're going down. And so for 22 weeks, I've literally had to track and plan every meal, every exception, every workaround so I could have like still be in the family and all the other things. And I got to here and I was like, I just need a break from doing it. I want to go on vacation with my family.
Yeah.
My wife and I are doing a staycation this weekend. And then next weekend, we're going away to Steamboat with the family. Okay. And I was like, I'm just not going to track. I was like, after the show, until Labor Day is over, I accept, like, this was hard for me the first time. I accept, like, I can't see my abs already. Like, they're just gone, right? I can see them, I guess, a little bit. But, it was really hard for me the first time because I was, like, so much work I put into getting to that point that, like, you don't want to let it go, right? Like, you don't want to, like, you develop, like, a form of bulimia, right? I looked this up, actually, after. It's very common in bodybuilders. But bulimia is like any effort to undo the food you've eaten. So people think it's like throwing up. It's like if I'm going to go do cardio because I ate that cookie, that's also like bulimia manifesting itself. Right?
Wow. Okay. I've never heard it explained that way. Okay.
Yeah. So that's what happens. A lot of people, what they do is, so for most people who have bulimia, it's like excavated. So they just like get the food out of their system.
Yeah.
But bodybuilders will often like do that and then maybe they throw up, but sometimes they're like, well, now I got to go do 5 hours of cardio until that number is equal to the amount of food I ate or whatever.
Until
I've worked
off, I've worked off the calorie count or whatever.
But it is a disorder. I don't have that right now, actually. Like I feel good about this also because the last time I came out of it, I felt like shit, right? Like, well, not after my last show, but the one before when I did it by myself and I didn't have a coach to like guide me. Yeah. I like was ravenous for food and I just like was terrible and I felt bad and it was very guilty. Now, like, I was just like, I'm taking these 2 weeks and I don't care what happens in these 2 weeks, really. I know how to lose weight. I know how to control my diet. I know how to get back to where I need to get to, right? I've mastered those pieces now. So I'm not worried about what happens per se, right? Like, and I'm curtailing a little bit. Like, I'm not going hog wild and having everything I want. Yeah. I indulged as much as I could in the first couple of days. And, now I'm snacking here and there, but I can give myself to after Labor Day and then it begins again, right? Also in September, my next big challenge is I started cycling. So I'm doing a 500-mile charity ride, not like for the month. So I'm going to ride 500 miles on my bike in September for charity.
Send me a link on that too. I'd be interested in contributing.
Oh, it's a good one. You should definitely sign up for it. You should be on my team.
Definitely. Let's do that.
That's a fun thing.
Hold on, I'm going out of this meeting with a lot of action items. I'm interviewing you, and I now have all kinds of deliverables that have come out.
Of them. That's all you got to start with.
Okay.
All right, I'll send you a link to that.
I appreciate you, brother. I appreciate you. Look, I mean, you and I are like-minded individuals. I love your attitude. I love your drive, and I love your inspiration. I know the why you're doing it, right? It just makes sense and it resonates with me. And I know I probably forced you into having this conversation right after your show and right in between your vacations. But again, I said this was for me. Forget everybody else. This last hour was mainly for me to get me back up and motivated. So I don't mind having the action items.
All the time. You do not learn anything unless you teach it back to someone else, right? And so for me, the telling of the tale of what happened is like my trash compactor for all those memories, right? Like, you got to figure out what you learn. I've never said some of those things, and now I appreciate them because I now understand. Having stated them, that's what these are. I didn't know why I'm happy now, and I'm like, oh, I'm happy because I don't feel hungry, or I don't feel guilty about gaining weight, right? Or I feel like I could give myself time to not have to. These are wins that I didn't appreciate. I didn't even appreciate until we're talking about it, right? Because it's the reflection on it that actually gives you the chance to think about it.
I like that. So so there we go. Providing some value both ways, both sides of the fence, man.
Always.
I've got some notes here just on the side here coming from some viewers, and I will take heed to this. The stream cam auto sensing is giving people they're making seasick. So I will take heed to that and note of that. I will never use this auto tracking functionality again. But
maybe it's better in the wide view. Maybe up close it's
that's true. That's true. Yeah. You don't need to see my mug. You'd rather see Greg than me anyway.
That would be let's see.
Well,
it's not as bad there.
It's not as bad. But again, okay. I'll work on the overlays for a better background that's not so busy. But the ITN family is growing with number of shows. So I've got now all these different logos. But
nice.
Brother, I appreciate you, man. I'm gonna let you go so you go do what you got to do, which I know is important work, and I know you've got some nice
homework now.
Yeah, but we all have things to do. I mean, the calendars are full, but again, man, I appreciate you. I don't take it for granted. You are a good man. You're a great father, good husband as well. I appreciate you for being such a good friend as well, man.
Always happy to have the time, my friend.
Thank you, brother. Be good to yourself.
Talk to you soon.
Out.